T-Wolves battle back and beat Luka and the Mavs tonight, 119-101. I got Wolves expert Jack Borman to help me break it all down. It's all coming up next on the Locked On Wolves POSTCAST.
You are Locked On Wolves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
T-Wolves moved to 18-5. They jumped to 8-4 on the road after taking down Luka and the Mavs in Dallas, 119-101. What's happening, everyone? Back in the lab, back at it with another T-Wolves POSTCAST episode right here on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. You got myself, Luke Inman, at Luke_Spinman. That's the man, Jack Borman, on Twitter, at JRBorman13. And before we jump into all the action, quick reminder, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon today to get started. All right, brother, let's jump right into this one. Lots to cover. Bottom line, though, Jack, the Wolves have yet to lose a game this year following a loss. Just shows their resilience, the just bounce back ability this year. You know, Ant, which we'll get into, still kind of shaking some rust off. But walk me through it, man. I mean, your biggest headlines in this one as the Wolves claw back from that 17-2 deficit to open the game and end up winning this one by 18. Who are we? Who are these Wolves? What's your big headlines from this one?
They just grind you down, man. You know, this team was down 17-2 with 8:46 left in the first quarter. In the closing 44-46 of game time, the Wolves won those minutes 117-84. That's a 32-point margin. And they allowed 41 points in the second half to the number 3 offense in the league, according to Clean and Glass. Pretty impressive. I think it's just the Wolves. I know we've talked about it before on this POSTCAST podcast. This team just really believes in its style of play, right? I don't think that they, Wolves teams of the past, even with, some of the same guys, would have just tried to get this whole, deficit back at once, right? Like, last season, 2 seasons ago, we probably would have been flipping on Prime Video, right, to watch the Thursday night football game or find another NBA game to watch. But, man, these guys just don't panic. They stick together. They trust that they can just settle in and correct their mistakes and fight back into the game and really, just wear down their opponent, especially on the defensive end of the floor. And that's a really tough thing to trust in when you allow 17 points in the first 3 minutes and change of game action. And, I think a lot of guys and a lot of NBA teams, when they're down in deep holes, feel like they need to get out of it with offense. And, in some levels or in some cases you do, if you're really faced with a time crunch, but you've got 45 of the 48 minutes to go, you just can't think like that. So that's probably the biggest one for me. And then obviously Nas Reed was just tremendous, right? Career high 7 made threes. I think he made 5 in the first half, which was a career high. His previous career high was 4. Got up 11 threes, almost 3 times as many as any other Timberwolves player. Mike Conley and Nikhil Alexander-Walker were next with 4 apiece, and shot a combined 5 of 9 or 5 of 8 from 3, which was huge from those two. But man, just the way Nas is able to break down his defenders. Dallas is a team that has a really small front court outside of its 7'1" rookie center, Derek Lively. And so Nas just did a great job, playing off the catch. Obviously making your first couple threes is huge to force the defense to close out on you a little bit harder. So he was able to attack off the dribble and really kind of found a rhythm there, attacking spread floors after the Mavs double-teamed Karl-Anthony Towns in the post, and he got the ball out, and the ball kind of got swinging around the perimeter and found Naz Reed. And he just made the right play seemingly every single time the ball touched his hands, and that's what Chris Finch loves about him. I think that's why Naz Reed fits in Chris Finch's kind of read and react, play random system better than any other player on this team. Just because of his ability to seemingly always make the right play and make really, really quick decisions. Even if it's the wrong decision, it's a quick decision. A fast wrong decision is better than, a slow good decision sometimes in NBA basketball. And so obviously those 2 things are huge. And then, just really composed game from Karl-Anthony Towns, I thought. He always does a great job rebounding. against smaller front courts, especially when he's kind of got those smaller fours guarding him. So he had 17 rebounds. I believe 5 of those were offensive, which was huge. And then I had 21 points, on an efficient 8 of 14 shooting. Was just kind of showing off with some of those tough contested makes he had there in the third quarter, which was a lot of fun to kind of see him get hot and go shot for shot with Luka a little bit before the Wolves were really able to take control of this one. So, just a really, great game from the Wolves, able to find composure and kind of settle down, especially after Luka got off to that crazy start. I think he had 12 of the first 17 on 5 of 6 shooting, and I think assisted the other 2 made field goals they had. So just a really resilient performance from a group, like you said, who hasn't, lost 2 in a row all year. And, looks like it's just going to be a really tough out for any team to deal with in the playoffs.
Yeah, you said it. The bench, man, they came through big time tonight. They got this team back into it. You mentioned it. Nas going off, breaks his personal record, most 3-pointers in a game. You're right. Did it at halftime with 5, ends the game with 7, though, team leading 27 points, and doing it all while Ant still tries to fight off the rust a little bit. And that's kind of been a big talking point, is who is this team offensively when Ant isn't on the court or isn't carrying the load on offense? So I guess how much of a statement game was that tonight to go blow for blow with the Mavs and Doncic and maybe spark some new life and confidence in this team, knowing, hey, when Ant is having an off night, we can still put up points. I mean, how big is that, not just for tonight in the win, but potentially moving forward later in the season as well?
Yeah, I just think, the depth is a really, really important thing, man. And, honestly, I think players are going to tell you that they approach every game the same way, right? But I think when you see a guy struggling like that in Anthony Edwards, right, 3 of 19, obviously he found a way to impact the game, as a playmaker, which is a great thing. But I think it forces guys almost to, kind of know that their margin for error is a little bit smaller, and so they have to make better, decisions with the ball, take better shots, that type of thing. And Nickeil is just one of those guys where I think he really, kind of just can settle into that complementary role really well. I mean, we saw it in the playoffs last year, without Jaden McDaniels and without Nas Reed, and I think just having so many composed and mature and secure in themselves role players, like all these role players have been paid, man. Mm-hmm. Like none of these guys are hunting for a huge contract right now. They all have their money. And so there's no ego among any of them, which is huge. And you look at Anthony Edwards, and Mike Conley hits that 3 towards the end of the game, is like the first one jumping up and down, celebrating him and giving him some love. I mean, he's 3 of 19. Most guys would be pissed off. And, even if they're winning a game where they'd just be frustrated and not, have much emotion one way or the other. But the fact that Ant is just jumping for joy for all these guys that are, finding success on nights that he is incredible. So I think, when you can have, the best of both worlds in a sense, where you have all these guys that can step up, but you also have a leader that doesn't get down on himself when he's not playing well. On nights those guys do step up is certainly is a fun thing to watch, over the course of an 82-game season.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of the bench stepping up, how about man? 5 of 6 from the floor, because I guess we always come on here, we always talk about the big studs. It's like, okay, we only got 25 minutes here after every game. We always talk about the big studs, all the big names on this team, all the big stats. There's a few guys, though, like Na, who don't put up the monster stats every night, but give the Wolves the hustle plays, the effort plays this season instead. How good's he been? And I mean, I guess maybe anybody else impress you tonight, albeit maybe not on the stat sheet, but instead doing some of the dirty work out on the court?
Yeah, obviously Nas is one of those guys. I mean, I think Nas was a plus 21 in the first half, which was pretty huge. It was either in the first half or through the first 3 quarters, one of the two. I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, I mean, he just is stuck to guys like glue, right? And you need guys that are willing to do that every single night. I mean, he's not a guy that's expending much of any of his offense, or excuse me, much if any of his energy on the offensive end of the floor. Saves it all for the defensive end of the floor, and just really irritates guys. Like, even if Luka is scoring, or even if whoever he's matched up with is scoring, he's making it tough for them, kind of draining their energy, make them work harder than they normally would. So all that stuff is really important, I think. And then, and and then beyond I think Kyle Anderson really deserves some credit tonight. Kyle Anderson's a guy who played pretty well on Luka, matched up on Luka last year for the Timberwolves, and has had some success historically against him. Just in terms of one-on-one matchups and the way that Kyle Anderson's, I think, forced more turnovers than he's allowed assists in the last few seasons when he's been guarding Luka Doncic, which is really important. And then did that tonight. You saw he had a couple of steals off of Luka in the second half, I believe. Really irritated him in the third and fourth quarters, that fourth quarter especially. Those are just things that you don't really think about over the course of a game. It's just kind of easy to watch the ball and see, who shot it and what the result is. But I think, when you're able to see Luka go up against all these different kind of guys, right? And Luka's just such a unique and tough cover. Like, people forget that Luka Doncic is like 6'8", 240. Like, he is a house.
That's insane, dude. They said that actually on the broadcast.
Yeah.
And it didn't even click. It's like, no, that guy's not that big, is he?
And it's like, Kyle Anderson's like 6'9", 215.
That's insane.
And, he bodied up Luka and made it really tough for him. And, just another guy who was willing to do the dirty work. And Troy Brown Jr. was right there with him in the fourth quarter, who played some really good defense on Luka in the fourth, just to kind of prevent the Mavs from, having any last gasp of a chance of getting back into the game. And, when you're able to turn to guys like that kind of at the end of your bench where, Troy Brown Jr. was playing pretty significant minutes for the Lakers last season. Kyle Anderson, started a lot for this team last season without Karl-Anthony Towns. I mean, it's just a luxury, man. And it, I think it provides just so much more margin for error for the team as a whole. I know I said individually, for individuals, it can kind of reduce that margin for error when you have a guy like Ant out, but for the entire collective, including Ant, it allows you so much more leeway when a star is not having a great night to be able to turn to some of these other guys and trust that, they can still play within themselves, but, kind of collectively make up for, what Ant couldn't give them tonight. And it's just really, really fun to see.
A plus 20 plus minus from you're right tonight, tying Ant with the team lead. That speaks volumes in itself right there. Is it safe to say this offense can keep up really with anyone if they stop those sloppy turnovers? I know it ended up being pretty close to even by the end of the night, but 11 turnovers at halftime alone, 15-3 points off turnover advantage for the Mavs. I mean, just think about that stat alone, 15-3 disadvantage just because of the turnovers at halftime, and no favors at the free throw line tonight either, by the way. If they can clean that up, how good can they be? And I guess from what you've watched this far, every game's a little bit different. How fixable is some of that stuff?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I think the Wolves have had way too many turnovers starting fast breaks this season, like some of their outlet passes. It started with Karl having kind of that bug at the start of the year where he was really struggling to, throw good outlet passes and not turn it over. Kyle had a couple of them tonight. Rudy obviously has had some, when he's not handing the ball off to someone. I think that they really just have to keep their heads about them after they close out stops, right? I think all you want to think about is just flying up the court and run. But I would say like probably 5 or 6 of their turnovers tonight came, trying to start fast break possessions. And they stole the ball back a couple of times, so I guess it's a wash. But, it's those are the things that you got to clean up because they're kind of unforced, right? It's just simple communication things and just kind of, it's a two-way street, right? Like you got to give your teammate a good, passing lane and a good and kind of show to the ball and go to the ball instead of trying to let the ball always come to you. But the guys throwing the passes too, just like got to make sure the guy's looking before they throw it. And so I think those are two big things. But in terms of the offense, being able to keep up with some of these other elite offenses, like it's funny, right? The Wolves haven't gotten to too many games that have just turned into shootouts. I think they've done a really good job of kind of making other teams play at their pace. And that's such a huge thing in the NBA, especially when you come down to the playoffs. Like if, a team, it's kind of what happened in that Grizzlies series from a few years ago, right? Like the Grizzlies obviously were really good at forcing turnovers and getting out and running and playing quickly and all that. But they really like to drag you into the half court and play a half court game where the Wolves didn't love to do that. And I think that made everything tense kind of down the stretch of those games. And that's why the Wolves had some of those choking losses. And I think it's the complete opposite now, right? Where the Wolves just really want to drag teams into the mud with them and force them to get stops. And I think that's the way that they can kind of keep up with these offenses. But in terms of shootouts, I mean, it remains to be seen, right? Like the Wolves have had a really, really strong offense when Anthony Edwards has been on the floor. I know Dane Moore tweeted something about this earlier today where I want to say they had like a top 10 offense with Ant on the floor and a bottom 5 offense with Ant off the floor, something like that. And it, obviously Ant's great. He's 25 points per game scorer, but I think a lot of it too is process, right? Like you just got to move the ball. I think a lot of the Wolves turnovers come when they're in isolation and they're just trying to do too much with it rather than just sharing it and moving off of it. We talked on the last show about, you need to provide outlets for Cat when he gets doubled in the post. Those are the types of things, right? It's a two-way street. It's not always just on the guy who has the ball. Sometimes obviously it is, but yeah, I think it'll, those are things that you hope as the team kind of plays more together and gets more comfortable and watches more film and can kind of point these things out that they can make those, kind of make those adjustments. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. That's obviously something that could be pretty problematic for them if they can't fix that problem as the season goes on.
Yeah, well said. A couple more on tonight and what you saw, but first a quick word from our sponsors over at FanDuel. Quick reminder, tonight's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets when you win just a $5 money line wager. That's $150 in bonus bets when you throw down just $5 on any money line. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on all the action. The app, it's so easy to use. And they got everything you need. Money lines, parlays, prop bets, you name it, they got it. FanDuel's got everything you need to bet on the entire NBA season. And it's by far the easiest and simplest betting app to use. Go check it out for yourself. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon today. America's #1 sportsbook. Place your $5 money line wager today for your chance to win $150 in bonus bets on FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of the NBA. All right, let's pick up back here. Wolves now 14-1 when leading after the third quarter. That's an incredible stat in itself. How the heck are they doing it? What's the secret sauce right now when it comes to this team closing out games in the fourth quarter?
Yeah, obviously, I think their defense has been great. Chris Finch talked about earlier in the season. Like, I think everyone on this team feels like they're in more control over the game just because your defense is something that no matter what's going on the offensive end of the floor, you can always lock in on defense and, and close out games and grind down teams playing that way, playing really tough together, multiple defense, right? Being able to switch, type of defense you're playing, whether it's, switching, drop at the level, which we saw all of tonight. They like to bring out that zone, especially in the third quarters to try to junk up games and change the rhythm and flow of the game. Like all that stuff is really important, right? Because they can go to any of that stuff, depending on who's on the floor, what personnel is on the floor for the other team, all those types of things. And so I think it starts there, right? They have the best rim protector in the world, Rudy Gobert. They have arguably the best perimeter defender in the world, and Jaden McDaniels. A guy like Anthony Edwards, who's more than willing of taking that challenge, when he wants to. He doesn't always want to, but when he wants to, he's elite. And then they just have a lot of length, and that's really important, especially as games tend to get more in the half court in the fourth quarter. There's less running up and down, less transition opportunities, and it's just tough for teams to deal with that. And then I think they've really figured out kind of who they want to play through in the fourth quarter. I think they play a lot through Karl Anthony Towns at the top of the key and at the nail, kind of in between the free throw line and the 3-point line. In the middle of the floor there. And they found great success doing it, right? And those guys, and Karl obviously can shoot it from anywhere, can put the ball on the deck, has made really good decisions as a driver in crunch time. And they've really gone away from putting the ball in Anthony Edwards' hands, which, I think some fans might think would be, a disadvantage for them. But, there's a lot of times where Ant kind of plays hero ball and doesn't really pass the ball and the offense gets bogged down and there's a lot of just bad possessions. And I think playing through Karl and then obviously getting to more pick and roll with Mike Conley and Rudy Gobert in the empty corner has been really important. That's just a really easy, repeatable action for them to get to. And then what I've really liked this season is if, you go look at, some of the visualizations around which guys are on the floor generally to start the fourth quarter. A lot of times it's Mike Conley, Kyle Anderson, and Rudy Gobert, right? Just three veteran guys, two ball handlers that you feel good with the ball in their hands. And then obviously having Rudy's rim defense is really important. And then the middle part of the quarter, they like to go with Karl Anthony Towns and Nas Reed, or Karl Anthony Towns and Kyle Anderson, as kind of a way to activate Karl as a scoring five. I mean, when he gets going as a scoring five, there's not too many players in the league better than him at that. And then if you can kind of get him in a rhythm down the stretch, which we've seen plenty in 4 or 5 games that Karl's just won them the game for him. That's been really important. And so I really like the way that Chris Finch has, approached this season and approached fourth quarters. It's worked really, really well for him. We haven't seen any of those, debacle, blowing a huge second half lead outside of that Atlanta game, which has been obviously a great thing to see. And, it's just a thing that you hope the Timberwolves can keep going and kind of keep building that momentum as they, approach the fourth quarter. And this month, with how many playoff teams they play, is going to be, a great test of that.
Yeah, we got Zion the other night versus the Pelicans, lost that game. Bounced back tonight versus Luka. But, dude, how special is that guy? You kind of touched on it, but just real quick. 39 points, 13 assists, just disgusting. You're a freak when everyone goes nuts when you miss 2 shots in a row. Like, oh, my God, you're terrible now. You missed 2 shots back-to-back. The sky is falling. If you were drafting a team from scratch, what pick is he in the pecking order? Just kind of top of your head.
In terms of the whole NBA?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Man.
I mean, he's still got to be top, 5, 6, 7 at worst?
I personally think Luka is the best offensive player in the world. Like, I don't think there's anybody better than him offensively. Just how much he can manipulate a defense in the half court. He makes the right read every single time, like literally every single time. And if there's the slightest sliver of space that he can fit a pass through to a shooter in the corner, a big on the roll, whether it's a pocket pass, a lob, a chest pass, whatever it is. I mean, he just creates angles to pass through better than, anyone I have ever seen, LeBron included. And obviously just his tough shot making, right? I mean, you go look at all of his field goal attempts tonight. There's probably more than half of them where there's a hand right here, right in his face, whether it's Jaden, Nikhil, Kyle, Troy Brown, Karl, Rudy, whoever it is. He just makes so many tough shots. And when you do everything right as a defender, and then that happens with a guy like Luka Doncic, it's just frustrating. And I don't know that there's a guy who makes fans of the team who's playing defense more helpless than him. Right? It's maybe Steph, which is some of the shots that Steph can hit from deep late in the shot clock. But the way Luka can play in isolation so efficiently is just insane. And how he has the stamina to do it over and over and over and over again. Especially, I mean, we didn't get to see it tonight in the fourth quarter, thankfully. But man, oh man, he just breaks the defense down better than anyone in the league right now, I think. And just an otherworldly talent, and it's really a true shame for NBA fans at large that the Dallas front office has done such a terrible job of putting a successful infrastructure around him and solid pieces around him that can, really support him and help him carry the team deep into the playoffs, because he is 101, man. He's a ton of fun to watch.
Okay, so I'm gonna guess that you would draft him in like the top 5, 6 picks. You can hold that thought. We'll pick
for
that
sure.
up next episode.
He's there
somewhere
there. He's there.
I don't expect you to pull out every single name.
After Jokic, he could be there.
Okay, he could be right there. Wow, he could be. Wow, that high. Okay, no, I respect it. I get it. All right, I got 2 more quick ones to close before we wrap up. But first, a quick word from Dave.com. Quick reminder, tonight's episode is brought to you by Dave, because at one time or another, we all need a little financial help. That's why Dave is out here to help. Dave can get you the cash when you need a hand in between paychecks, and Dave is the banking app that's leveling the financial playing field. When you download Dave, you could get up to $500 in 5 minutes or less. No credit check, no late fees. It's part of Dave's extra cash account, advance money with no interest, and then settle up later. Download Dave today at dave.com/LockedOnNBA. That's dave.com/LockedOnNBA for $500 in 5 minutes or less with no credit check and no late fees. Download the Dave app and go to dave.com/LockedOnNBA for terms and conditions. Go to dave.com/legal. Eligibility, criteria, and instant transfer fees apply. Banking services provided by Evolve. Member FDIC. All right, real quick. We're officially past the quarter of the way through the season mark. What's been the top one or two biggest surprises to you when it comes to your preseason Wolves expectations and where we stand today? In no order, just top of your head. I got to imagine having the number one defense in the NBA is up there somewhere.
No, actually, I thought the Timberwolves were going to be the best. I think I said it on the basketball party. When we did our season predictions.
We'll pull the archives up of that. We'll pull the footage.
Yeah, well, you might have to. I'm pretty confident I said the Timberwolves would be the best defense in the league. I also said that I thought they'd be the second team in the West. I thought they'd go 52-30.
Look at you, all over it.
They're currently on pace to do better than that. So, yeah, man, the biggest surprise, honestly, that Karl-Anthony Towns has looked as good as he has. I think that he just has to change so much of what he does. And he's been so malleable, and he's answered the call this season in a way that I think truthfully better than anyone could have hoped for from him. I mean, the way that he's really settled in here over the last, 10, 12 games, averaging like 23 and 10 on 50, 50, 85 shooting has just been a godsend for this team, especially when they've missed Ant late in games like we've talked about. So I'd say that's right there. And then beyond that, I'd probably say, man, just that, Kyle Anderson has struggled a little bit and Shake Milton has struggled a little bit. I thought those two guys would probably fit in a lot better with this team. I felt really confident about Kyle Anderson playing the three, and he hasn't played quite as well as I think he played last year. But then again, when you go from playing 28, 30 minutes a game as a starter at a different position to now, be asked to do some different things coming off the bench, playing only, 20 to 25 minutes. It's a big change. And, I think, myself, I probably should have allowed him some more grace there, but I think that just speaks so highly to like what I think of him as a player, and that he's just so important and crucial to what this team does, and such a high IQ and high level player. So I'd say probably those things. And then, outside of that, I think it's just kind of hard to judge the rest of it. Right. Like, I hope that Rudy Gobert would come through in the way that he did, but I probably couldn't have assumed that he would have been, this good. Like he's playing the best basketball of his career this season.
Yeah, that's wild.
No question about it. And that's really been important. And, I think that the Timberwolves have been such a dominant second half team. I think that's on it. That's been a big thing. That was not a big thing last year or even 2 years ago, with a lot, like I said, a lot of the similar pieces here. And I think just a lot of that has to do with Mike Conley, right? Just having a calm presence, a guy you can trust. And, this is now the third full season with this coaching staff for all these guys. They know what they're about. I'll really trust and believe in one another. So, and that's a great comment from whoever just shouted that about Naz's defense. The way that he's been able to move his feet at the three has been, it's been pretty incredible. And something that certainly opens more doors for this team in terms of, nights where Naz and Carl both have it going, and you want to be able to play those guys late in games and hopefully be able to close potentially with that three big lineup, depending on what the other team is doing.
That's our boy Random Planet, who dominates like Nas Reed in the comments section every night, all over it. All right, last one. Schedule coming up is no joke. Doesn't let up. Pacers, Heat, Sixers, Lakers, Kings, gauntlet. 3 of the next 5 on the road. Quick thoughts when you hear that stretch. And after what you saw tonight, I mean, what's the number one thing that needs to be improved or continue to be an area of strength for this team during that stretch?
Winning games that you're supposed to win, baby. They're supposed to win the game against Indiana, right? Indiana has really struggled against length and against size. And so that's something that The Timberwolves obviously have. They've played pretty well against the Pacers the last few years. Obviously, they're driven by superstar point guard Tyrese Halliburton, Jaden Ant. They've got the horse, Troy Brown Jr. They've got the horses to be able to do it and shut him down. I think they're also awfully thin on the front line with Obi Toppin at the 4. It's another great opportunity for Karl to really take control of that game. It's at home, celebrating Ant's jersey or shoe launch, which should be fun. Feel good about that. And then Miami, I think they could be without Bam Adebayo. They also could be without Tyler Hero, who said today he's targeting a return either Monday against the Wolves or Wednesday in the game after that. So, and then Philadelphia will be a fun game, man. They didn't play Joel Embiid when they came to Target Center right before Thanksgiving. So it'll be a good opportunity to, face another guy like Zion that's just a dominant force in the paint, can draw a lot of fouls, can score from in there. It'll be a good test of kind of this big lineup. And then against the Lakers, same thing. It'll be interesting if LeBron wants to play in that one. LeBron just hasn't really cared about playing against the Timberwolves in recent games. He's played in those games, obviously. And this isn't counting the play-in game, but just hasn't really, felt like putting his imprint on the game quite as much. Mm-hmm. And so that'll be interesting if he gets up for that one, even though it's in Minnesota. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. I think it's just really good opportunity for the Wolves to, find out more about themselves playing against, wildly different types of superstars between Halliburton and Butler and Embiid and then Davis and James and then De'Aaron Fox, next weekend out in Sacramento. So it'll be a lot of fun, good test for the Wolves. And like I said, too, a good test of all the different types of defenses they can play, right? Because, one defense isn't going to solve everything for this squad against all those different types of players. So it'll be cool to see, which kind of defensive players can make more of an imprint on the game based on, who they're defending and what type of defensive coverage they deploy.
Well done tonight, as always. I know you're itching to get out of here to go check that Raiders-Chargers score in your toilet bowl game. So we'll get out of here.
Don't even start.
we'll get down 17-2. They end up winning this one by 18 in Dallas. Hold off Luka, his 39 points and 14 assists. Nas Reed with 27, 7 threes. Breaks his career high with 3-pointers. Wolves moved to 18-5 on the year, now 8-4 on the road. As always, huge shout out to everyone that joined us on tonight's postcast. Rest assured, we'll be back each and every game, same time, same place, right here to break it all down. And quick reminder as well, go check out all of Jack's work on Twitter at JRBorman13. Anything we should be on the lookout for, anything on Canis Hoopus, anything as of late Wolves fans might want to dive into?
Yeah, I'm on a lot of previews here for the rest of the month. Not as many home games, so I won't be recapping as many games with being on the postcast here. But obviously with work winding down here a little bit, the rest of the month, full-time work at least, have some more time to give to some columns, which will be fun, especially now that we have a pretty good sample size of what this team looks like and what they could be. So should be a lot of fun to watch this team and cover them here against all these playoff teams the rest of the month.
Yeah, love it. That'll do it for us tonight. Next on deck, Pacers this Saturday, tip-off 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Join us again right here for the entire recap. And follow all our work over on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Network if you haven't already. Like that, subscribe so you never miss a beat. And one more plug if you haven't, go check out Ben Beacon over the Locked On Wolves podcast as well. He's pumping out daily Wolves stuff every single day. He's Jack Borman. I'm Luke Inman on Twitter at Luke_Spinman. Until next time, signing out.